Hi guys, this is the first live stream of the members only book discussions. Today we start with the book that is called India, that is Bharat, which is according to me the most important book of this decade, and which will be spoken of in highly respected tones, and will be discussed in matters of everything essentially in the realm of political science, history, philosophy, political philosophy for the next 10-20 years in this country. It's the most groundbreaking, path-breaking, and trend-setting, trailblazing book you can possibly think of for the next 10-15 years. Because you'll have to remember, decades later, when people speak of a turn in the ethos of the minds of the people of this country, this book and the author of this book were probably one of the prime movers, chief trendsetters, chief mind changers in this realm. So since this is the first members only live stream, I'm not sure how many of you all are going to join, and if someone joins, let me know if the audio is coming fine, etc. Let me just check from my phone as well, and then we can start. And I'm not sure from where should I start. If no one ends up joining today, then I'll just start the introduction part anyway. It will be an excuse for me to read it once again. I've read it already 2-3 times. Okay. So let me just check if the audio is coming fine. Okay. For me to read it once. Okay, audio is fine. So I'll just start from here. I have 2 page marks put in this book for some reason. I probably read it up till that portion and again started that portion sometime later on, and I forgot about it. I've read it countless times. I've told people about this book countless times. I've read portions of it to other people countless times. So maybe that's why 2 page marks. So until the time someone joins, let's just see what the foreword of this book says. Okay. Otherwise, every day from now on, we are going to have members only live streams at 9, and whoever joins will be welcome. And we will discuss other books as well. Okay. So the foreword of this book is written by Dr. Gautam Sen. He and that person has a BSc in economics and a PhD as well. He is the co-creator of the graduate program in international politics, in international political economy at the London School of Economics and Political Science, from where many of our respected leaders and intellectuals have passed out. London School of Economics, Ambedkar, Nupur Sharma, everyone has passed out from that school as well. So, foreword from Dr. Gautam Sen. If anyone has joined, let me know in the comment section, okay? The almost accidental journey of Jesai Deepak, once a student of engineering, you all know these stories, towards the legal profession, and then a momentous apparent decision to grapple with the future of his very civilization, is a fascinating story worth reading for the narrative alone. His awakening, a biography of Jesai Deepak would be great in itself. His awakening is also an account of the growing reawakening of the Indic civilization itself, the subject of V.S. Naipaul's celebrated book, A Million Mutinies Now. The protagonist of this tale, Jesai Deepak, did not apparently begin with any remarkable antecedents for this quest, except perhaps an urgent desire to understand the troubling predicament of his own civilization. His thirst for deeper knowledge to analyze the vexatious situation of Bharat amounted to a manifestation of jnana and an approach that echoes darshana. Okay, so knowledge and philosophy. It prompted him to begin a trilogy on the experience of Bharat as a civilization, which now we know will be a quadrilogy, not a trilogy. They're talking about this series of books, with the present volume ending in 1920 and 2 projected volumes covering the period from the early 1920s and beyond. The civilizational issues evaluate a number of core issues that define its encounter with the modern world. Sai Deepak describes them as the impression on Bharatiya civilization of the tension between coloniality and constitution, exhibited specifically by the impact on religion, nature, language, caste and tribe. Sai Deepak became an autodidact, which means self-taught, reading widely and consulting eminent intellectuals of the human sciences. It could not have been an easy task to immerse oneself in a vast literature with which he did not have familiarity, given his educational background in engineering and the law. But he has grasped the essentials of the vast and complex arguments and put them down in a readable form in his single-handed endeavor to impact the course of Bharatiya history. There are and were others traversing this stony path, but he is unique in the import of his practical focus on the law to bring about concrete change, which ideological campaigns alone cannot achieve. This is a very important point, okay? You can diagnose the problem. You can think about what you can notice the problem. You can complain about it. But how are you going to actually change the situation of that problem, okay? In that context, Dr. Gautam Sen writes in his foreword that Sai Deepak's practical focus on the law to bring about concrete change, which ideological campaigns alone cannot achieve. But ideological campaigns bhi zaruri hai. Reading his book highlights the clarity and nuance for which he has become justly admired and respected as a lawyer. His book also encapsulates the need for even more thoughtful research to fully explicate the issues raised by Sai Deepak. Sai Deepak's involvement in historic cases such as the Sabarimala Ayyappa temple case as a Supreme Court advocate serves as the trigger for his book because they underline the critical issue of the historical consciousness of Bharatiyas, evident in how they were presented, argued and received by the Supreme Court. The apparent dichotomy counterposed between tradition and the rationality of modernity. The rationality of modernity is kind of written in a sarcastic tone here. The apparent dichotomy, a contradiction between what? Counterposed between tradition and rationality of modernity. Okay? As if they are exclusive of each other, as if they can't go hand in hand with each other, as if they are absolutely opposed to each other. It's presented to us in that way. So that apparent dichotomy counterposed between tradition versus the rationality of modernity by those involved on opposing sides exposed the parameters of the key intellectual conundrum meaning key question analyzed by Sai Deepak, namely coloniality. This is the most important term in this book. This is a key word, in fact, namely coloniality and the distorted consciousness, by and large, of the Bharatiya society. What is coloniality? We'll get to that in detail, of course, in the book. Such perception, but just for now, for a brief gist, coloniality is mental colonization. Such perceptual distortions arose from the unconscious and largely unquestioning acceptance of ideas of modernity that came to dominate intellectual life in the 19th century and accepted as valid by both colonizers and the colonized. Okay, this is important because we will get to analysis and what other experts from other fields have also said and noticed and observed and written about it extensively, that even the victims of colonization become ardent followers and upholders of colonization, because colonization ends up becoming an aspirational model. The natives do it, at least the native elites. The argument advanced in the book in the exact obverse of the accusation of quote-unquote false religion leveled by Christian evangelists against Hindus. What Sai Deepak seeks to unravel is the mystique and veil of coloniality itself that has profoundly shaped the thinking of the conquered by white European Christian subjugation since the advent of Christopher Columbus in 1492 CE. That's when Christopher Columbus set out to find out India and mistakenly ended up finding the North America. A key intellectual and political conviction of the argument in the Latin American decoloniality literature, revisited in Sai Deepak's tract, is the overpowering nature of colonial consciousness, which we are also terming as coloniality here. The overpowering nature of colonial consciousness and the distinctive self-serving mindset of the colonizer as well. It first locates the origins of the colonial experience at the dawn of the religiously and racially inspired quote-unquote age of discovery, okay, an era of discovery, rather than the subsequent era of the Enlightenment with capital E that preoccupies post-colonial analysts, from which J. Sai Deepak is different because he is a decolonial scholar at this point and not post-colonial. We will get to what are the differences between post-colonial and decolonial as well, but just for a gist, just because I have read this book already, I can tell you at least this much, that post-colonialism is about identifying the problem of colonialism, but also at the same time saying that whatever was in that society before colonialism was also crap. Okay, that's a pretty hilarious and a hypocritical position to hold. If X is bad and whatever replaces that X is colonialism, and you hate the colonialism and the X, that cannot work. What decoloniality brings to the table is saying that no, X was absolutely fabulous, great, whatever its flaws cannot be analyzed from the lens of the colonizer. Oh, Ashish Jha is here. Hi brother. We are just discussing the foreword written by Dr. Gautam Sen, because I'm not sure how many people were supposed to join today. So let me know if you want me to discuss any particular chapter or move ahead. Otherwise, I'll just keep reading the foreword. It's just one or two pages left anyway. So a basic distinction between post-colonial studies based on which this our entire liberal arts academia of the entire world stands today. Post-colonialism. There the problem is they are absolutely opposed to the idea of anything pre-colonial, whereas at least J. Sai Deepak, I don't know about other decolonial scholars how much they have specified these things, because frankly in the case of other civilizations there isn't much to rediscover, because all those civilizations are dead. They can only reminiscence and think that, oh, this was so great, I wonder how it was like. India is basically the only civilization where the pre-colonial element is largely existent even today. So what J. Sai Deepak posits and proposes is that let's have a hybrid future. A lot of percentage of pre-colonial ethos, wisdom, education, language, knowledge systems fused with whatever modern innovations and benefits, facilities, technology we have today. So decoloniality does not mean all of us just get rid of our computers, electronic gadgets, and we go to live in a hut like an ascetic. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, yes, use these gadgets, but have your pre-colonial ethos and morals as well. Have your pre-colonial symbols. Be as close as possible to your pre-colonial way of life. That's all he's saying. So, age of discovery rather than the racially inspired age of discovery rather than the subsequent era of enlightenment that preoccupies post-colonial analysts, firmly establishing its underlying Christian ideological rationalization. Kiska Christian ideological rationalization of the age of discovery. It wasn't done for good intentions, it was done with Christian ideological rationalization. The decoloniality episteme can be largely translated into, if we are talking about a Sanskrit based language, then Gyan Parampara or Gyan Tattva. That's the basically translation of epistemology. The decoloniality episteme rejects the unspoken foundational intellectual assumptions, okay? Rejects the unspoken foundational intellectual assumptions of modernity. This is a great way to write this concept, okay? There are some foundational assumptions, presumptions, intellectually about modernity, okay? That modernity is inherently good. whatever was before modernity was inherently bad, intrinsically bad, definitely bad. We are sure of that. That's the unspoken foundational intellectual assumption. So the decoloniality episteme rejects that, rejects the unspoken foundational intellectual assumptions of modernity that are in effect also subliminally universalized within the very postmodernist and post-colonial critiques of the colonial and imperialist postures of European modernity. Exactly what I was talking about, that the postmodernist and post-colonial critiques of the colonial and imperialist postures of European modernity, the mistake they are making is that they are also saying that now what is the modern today is the best possible thing, and whatever was in this society before colonialism was also bad, and colonialism is also bad. Okay, both are bad. Now is the time to be, on which apparently the colonizers also agree. Okay, so the biggest mainstream critiques of colonialism, which is the post-colonial school, they and the colonial defenders of the idea of colonization, which is a fraction of a minority in the Western world, the white Christians, etc., and some black conservatives. What they agree upon is what is agreed upon by post-colonial scholars as well, that what we have now is the best thing we have ever had in any colonized society. That is the weird part, and that is mainly the most important part to remember about this ethos, is that it's subliminally universalized. Okay, this is considered to be an universal phenomenon. This is absolutely true everywhere. That's their assumption. So also subliminally universalized within the very postmodernist and post-colonial studies and scholars who otherwise pretend to critique the colonial and imperialist postures of European modernity. In effect, the decolonial framework, which is the topic of this book, seeks to reinscribe the primacy of indigeneity, indigenous consciousness, and its subjectivity in formerly colonized societies and civilizations. Okay, three things. Okay, the decolonial framework seeks to reinscribe, rediscover three things. Those three things are the primacy of indigeneity. So indigeneity, the Adivasis, essentially the Adivasi ethos of a land will be primary. The indigenous consciousness will be primary, and its subjectivity. Okay, some things are objective, some things are subjective. So and whenever subjectivity is brought up in such a conversation, people immediately think that we are going to defend the idea of Satipatha, caste system, etc. But no, we are going to critique it using our own lenses, our own history, and that is what is subjective. Because remember, casteism was everywhere, but it was presented to the world as if it's a uniquely Indian thing because of the word caste, and that has been delved into obviously in this book famously. But subjectivity can help us here, because we can analyze with our own lenses that okay, they are saying this is caste, but what we end up looking at is and what we end up discovering is that no, this is just a class system. This is just a status system which was present in every society in the world. So for that you need subjectivity, indigeneity, indigenous consciousness, primacy of your lenses. One of the fundamental questions examined in the book is the rootedness of the entire colonial venture in Christian conceptions derived from biblical verities. Okay, the entire colonial venture was rooted in Christian conceptions which were in turn derived from biblical verities. However, what is very rarely understood is the chameleon adaptability of the Christian ideological yearning towards spiritual and psychological enslavement of the quote-unquote other, okay, people who are not Christians. The Christian ideological yearning towards spiritual and psychological enslavement of the other manifested in post-enlightenment world as secularism. Okay. The Enlightenment era and the Renaissance era brought out a lot of scholarship in Europe mainly, जर्मनी, फ्रांस एट्सेट्रा. एंड उसके बाद जो एरा आया वहाँ पे सेक्युलरिज्म, द वर्ड सेक्युलरिज्म गॉट अ डिफरेंट कॉनोटेशन ऑल टुगेदर which was not so before the Enlightenment era. What secularism is to us today, what secularism is supposed to mean, although is applied in a very skewed way, is that you are supposed to look at all religions equally. But that was not the idea during the birth of the word secularism. And incidentally, for that reason, since it was not born with that idea in mind, how we understand secularism today, and that is why we have to end up calling so many people pseudo-seculars, because secularism is inherently skewed towards the indigenous community, skewed against everywhere. Okay, did modernity concept come to justify colonization? Modernity actually came parallel. So do you want me to get to that chapter right now? Let me know in the comment section. Where was that chapter? Let me check the contents. Entrenchment of coloniality. Okay, do you want me to discuss this particular part, or did you ask me? Okay, just clarify that once, because otherwise modernity नाम का तो chapter दिखाई नहीं दे रहा है यहाँ पे. But if you're asking me that if modernity concept came to justify colonization, then probably no. It seems like an unintended parallel conception and phenomenon that came about, and like it was discussed in this book that modernity was not even started to describe anything better. Modernity was just a term to describe something new. New को better बोलना शुरू हुआ बहुत बाद में. That's all. People who started using the word modern did not do so to justify colonization. उनके descendants started using the word modernity to justify colonization. That okay, whatever is but now is the better thing. So post enlightenment world में secularism आता है in the form we know it today. But as we know in India that secularism is inherently anti-Hindu. It ends up being anti-Hindu because the internal characteristics of secularism hasn't died down, which is what we will get to later in the book, that secularism was not born as a sarvadharma samabhava concept. It was born to say to the kings that keep your hands off the churches. Church अपने जगह पे होगा, king अपने जगह पे होगा. Don't go around fighting amongst yourselves. Let both of them survive to their full strengths. That is what secularism is. Christian theology also proved an irresistible handmaiden to the prolonged plunder of colonized lands. Okay, Christian theology was associated with the plundering of colonized lands, and it inflicted a particularly devastating tragedy by doing what? By severing indigenous traditions from the seamless continuity of life with nature, which many non-European societies practiced. Okay, this is probably the biggest side effect that colonization has had, that severing the ties between indigenous traditions from the seamless continuity of life which was going on for thousands of years with nature, that tie with nature, which was done in many non-European societies forever. Of course, brutal violence, cynical contrivance, and the manipulation of local divisions and fissures were the important immediate and daily adjuncts to the colonial rule. Okay, this is where casteism, sati pratha comes in. Of course, local divisions, local fissures. ऐसा तो कभी नहीं होगा कि in any society that there are no problems in the entire society. Okay, there will be always some little problems going on between some groups. It won't even has to remain little. It will sometimes spill over into larger, bigger conflicts. But those conflicts were used and manipulated and increased by the British, which is why casteism reached its most vicious and vile form under the British rule. Local divisions and fissures were the important, and manipulation of these things were the important and immediate and daily adjuncts to the colonial rule. Sai Deepak focuses detailed attention on an issue of particular importance to Bharatiyas, which is likely nature of the colonial impact on their civilization and the relevance of coloniality to explain their current predicament. In a thoroughly fleshed out exegesis, Sai Deepak reiterates the findings of leading scholars of Bharat on how deeply coloniality has imbued Indic consciousness, which exhibits itself in self-abnegation, even self-loathing. Yes, which actually this particular concept was first fleshed out and described by Sitaram Goel in his book How I Became a Hindu. He did not know that he did not conceptualize a term for it. He did not call it colonial consciousness or decoloniality or coloniality, etc. He just described this phenomenon exact word for word. He was absolutely perfect in his diagnosis. So obviously Sai Deepak has admitted himself that he is standing on the shoulders of giants. So which exhibits itself in abnegation, even self-loathing. That whatever I am doing as a Hindu is most probably bad or stupid, because that's what I've been told. Because the post-colonial studies people, the liberal arts academia, and the defenders of colonization have all told me that I am as a Hindu am stupid, because whatever good thing I have today is because of colonization. Even the post-colonial people have said that. Post-colonial people have only said that no, the violence that happened during bringing on of these facilities, that's the problem. But the bringing on of these facilities while wiping out your past and your history and your memories, your knowledge systems, that is not the problem. The problem is कि ये train when लाने में, English language लाने में इतना violence क्यों हुआ? That's their only talking point. Like even Shashi Tharoor, he talks only about the economic aspect of it, but not the cultural or epistemological aspect of colonization. That is the difference between a decolonial scholar and a post-colonial scholar. Every aspect of Bharatiya society, including its governance and legal structures, originates in colonial constructs which ignored Bharat's indigeneity. Its continuous adroitness in nurturing extranational loyalties and tethering Bharat's intellectual life to the interests of extra-civilizational detractors can only be described as dismaying. Notice here that its continuing adroitness in nurturing extranational loyalties, okay? A lot of people in India are not just loyal to India, but seem to have loyalties to Harvard and other, even in terms of the religion, they have loyalties elsewhere. Okay, Harvard, Cambridge and other people, Middle Eastern colonizers, those kinds of things. And what they also do is tether. They attach Bharat's intellectual life to the interests, the vested interests of extra-civilizational detractors. And that can only be described as dismaying. Importantly, the European worldview continues to prevail in former colonies such as Bharat without the need to actually espouse Christianity, because it spawned the secular worldview and framework from within its established traditions and scriptural injunctions. Okay, now the time has come when you are not even calling yourself a Christian, you are not even converting to Christianity, but you are espousing all the beliefs associated and stemming from Christianity, because you have been fooled to that extent. You are leading your life as a Christian without even knowing it. This misconceived explanatory framework, which continues to hold sway in Bharat, explanatory framework meaning the lenses of analyzing things in the colonizer's way. This fails to grasp the nature of the continuing adversarial demonization of Bharat's indigeneity by doing what? By wrongly specifying the very parameters of the discourse and also misdirecting it towards overarching intellectual sources of stupefaction, such as secularism. Because anything you bring up, any pro-Hindu any remotely equality related also concept or rights or duties that you bring up, you will be faced with the wall called secularism. That is the intellectual source of stupefaction. Okay, हाँ सेक्युलरिज्म बोल दिया, यू आर फ्रोजन नाउ. अब क्या बोलूं, सीए चाहिए, नो 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 सेक्युलरिज्म. एनआरसी चाहिए, नो नो सेक्युलरिज्म. वक्फ बोर्ड बंद करना है, नो नो सेक्युलरिज्म. Okay, Ashish Jha is saying in beginning concept of secularism supported whom, state or the church, because at that time state were revolting against the church. Yes, so this term introduced by church itself to save themselves. Yes, they were saying that yes, you are a state, you be secular. By secular they meant that you will not meddle in religious affairs. जो कि आज इसका मीनिंग ये खड़ा हो गया कि the state has to just stop thinking about religion in every way and absolutely let the indigenous community go to hell. And secularism somehow means that only one religion specifically is allowed to go to hell, because the state's responsibility of being secular is up to that point when the majority, when the indigenous population is harmed. That is the funny part. And why does that happen? Because of the inherent problems of the birthplace of secularism, the moment of birth of secularism. That is the problem. Otherwise, secularism, if truly applied, should have meant that okay, the state with capitalists will not favor any particular religion. But why does the Indian state specifically end up favoring every religion other than the indigenous religion? Because of the misconstrued notions of secularism and the evil intentions of the scholars of this idea of post-colonialism and secularism, who are saying that yes, colonization happened, a lot of violence happened, but whatever you have today, you have to be grateful for that, and colonization से पहले जो था वो सब गलत था and खराब था. So overarching intellectual sources of stupefaction such as secularism. So वकफ बोर्ड भी बंद नहीं कर सकते हैं because secularism आ जाएगा सामने. You can't even talk about these things because secularism. And it ends up being a very ambiguous and vague idea. Otherwise, what it intends to be on theory is a great idea, because you are not supposed to favor one religion over another and give unnecessary benefits to one religion, even if they are even if they are the indigenous culture. But indigenous culture को celebrate करना और बचाना is not the same as giving reservations to people from the indigenous community. तो वो तो preferential treatment हो गया. Not doing the preferential treatment for anyone is really secularism. But what we are ending up having is discriminatory preferential treatment against the indigenous tradition, indigenous knowledge systems, indigenous culture, and the indigenous faiths and religion. And that is why secularism gets the bad name. Sai Deepak also highlights the role of coloniality in Bharat's failure, coloniality meaning mental colonization, in Bharat's failure to truly excavate the nature of the Islamic impact on Indic culture. हाँ, ये हम क्यों नहीं कर पाए? क्योंकि secularism, which itself is a product of secular political expediency that enjoins deceit and self-delusion. तो सारे मुसलमान तो खराब नहीं है, वो हमारा कुछ नहीं बिगाड़ेंगे, those kinds of things. See, there are so many nice Muslims doing music, doing Urdu shairi, etc. That's the self-delusion in the alleged interest of buying that elusive social peace. वो elusive social peace क्या है? वो है secularism, और जिसमें सिर्फ एक ही साइड कंट्रीब्यूट करता है, and which has been talked about by Sri Aurobindo, Rabindranath Tagore, everyone, that elusive social peace will never happen. Ashish Jha is saying, according to you, why secularism word got introduced while emergency? Because it was the politically expedient thing to do. कि अभी और तो कुछ excuse नहीं है कि क्या करे, हमने तो we screwed up the situation, the political class, and then they thought that okay, let's make a political gimmick out of something. Okay, let's just say that we did particularly a new nice thing. अब new nice thing कहाँ से मिले? इकोनॉमी तो गड्ढे में है, चारों ओर सोशलिस्ट है इंदिरा गांधी के, इसलिए कुछ नया सोचो, नया वर्ड लाओ, चलो सेक्युलरिज्म घुसाते हैं. वैसे भी इंडिया सेक्युलरिज्म था, मगर फिर भी सेक्युलरिज्म घुसाते हैं, जस्ट एज एन एक्सक्यूज टू से दैट सी वी डिड समथिंग न्यू एंड नाइस एंड नाउ इट्स गोइंग टू बी all okay. In the same way, Marxism is also rightly deemed as just another universalizing European project. कि यूनिवर्सलाइजिंग नेचर जो है ऑफ यूरोपियन प्रोजेक्ट्स, दैट्स द मोस्ट इरिटेटिंग थिंग अबाउट एनीथिंग कॉलोनियल इन माई पर्सनल ओपिनियन, दैट जो कोई भी आइडिया आज इनको आता है, अगले दिन से दे प्रिटेंड लाइक इट्स अ यूनिवर्सल कॉन्सेप्ट एंड सी अ साइड इफेक्ट ऑफ सेक्युलर होक्स. या so what I was discussing is that the population problem, okay, which China fell into the trap very soon. Marxist scholars everywhere were saying that सारा खाना खत्म हो जाएगा, all crops will be over, all fuel sources will be over, all food sources will be over, everyone will die of starvation. यहाँ पे दंगा हो जाएगा फूड लेके, तो पॉपुलेशन कम करो, पॉपुलेशन कम करो. तो ये चाइना के दिमाग में घुस गया, अच्छा पॉपुलेशन खराब है, चलो कल से बंद कर देते हैं. And they did not wait, they did not have any social discourse, no one debated in their society. Uske concept that it's applicable everywhere, and pretty much an irreversible damage that they have done to their society. No one has a brother or sister in entire China today. Internet is back, I hope. Yeah, 4 people have joined. Nice. Let me know if the video is working, okay? I think it's still going round and round. Let me just check from my phone. Hello. Is it fixed now? No, it's still lagging. क्या हो गया OBS को अचानक? Yeah. Let's see if it works now. Okay, I'm going to turn off my webcam. Let me know if the audio is coming, okay? Okay, audio is coming fine, right? Okay, I'll turn on the video a little later on. ये बिटरेट का प्रॉब्लम है, इंटरनेट का प्रॉब्लम है या OBS का प्रॉब्लम है, ये समझ में नहीं आ रहा है. I've never had this problem. This is new. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, guys. So, the universalizing tendency of all European thought. मेरे को एक आइडिया आया कल से ये सब पे अप्लाई करना है. इवन आई टर्न्ड वीगन इन 2015 एंड आई रिमेंबर दैट आई यूज्ड टू थिंक एग्जैक्टली दिस वे. क्योंकि वीगनिज्म, मैं तो वीगन इसलिए नहीं बना कि मैं बड़ा डिवाउट हिंदू था. मैं वीगन इसलिए बना क्योंकि दैट वाज माय एसोसिएशन विथ ऑल द कॉमी आइडियोलॉजीज दैट आई ग्रू अप विथ ऑल अराउंड मी. मगर उसमें भी एक फिर भी टू बी फेयर, वीगन्स आर एटलीस्ट डूइंग सम पर्सनल एक्शन. ओके, अदर देन दैट नॉन वेगन कॉमीज क्या कर रहे हैं कि कोई भी पर्सनल अकाउंटेबिलिटी, कोई भी पर्सनल एक्शन भी नहीं ले रहे हैं. पूरे दिन पूरा जिंदगी सिर्फ कंप्लेन कर रहे हैं अबाउट कैपिटलिज्म, यूक्रेन वॉर, चाइल्ड ट्रैफिकिंग एटसेट्रा. बट unless they ever become vegans, that is why I tell to all activists of any field that first become vegan or at least vegetarian, then you will understand how self control, accountability and incentive structures work. Because जो भी चीज के खिलाफ तुम प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे हो उसमें से कोई ना कोई तो बेनिफिट कर रहा है ना. So how do you stop the person benefiting from that particular atrocity? You have to put yourself in that person's shoes. You can't just complain and request or just shout at that person that no, please stop benefiting from this. Okay, you have to understand what is exactly the thing he is gaining, and how would you prevent yourself from gaining from that atrocious thing if you were in that person's place. For that, veganism or vegetarianism is a great way to test yourself. तो वीगन बन के मुझे लगा कि कुछ साल बाद मुझे आई नोटिस दैट व्हेन आई बिकेम अ वीगन, इमीडिएटली within 1 week I started criticizing, having debates, ugly fights with everyone around me who is not a vegan. Okay, since I grew up in a basically communist and leftist society, no one was a devout Hindu or a vegetarian Hindu anyway. So all of them are socialists and communists and agreeing with all liberal talking points, but none of them are vegans. And I end up having ugly debates with them in terms that, okay, if you are protesting about this thing, why aren't you bothered about the treatment given to animals? And that's not registering with them. वो तो उनका हिपोक्रेसी है, वो छोड़ो. बट मेरा प्रॉब्लम क्या था कि मुझे एक आइडिया आया इमीडिएटली 1 week में. आई एक्सपेक्टेड एवरीवन एल्स टू अग्री विथ मी. दैट इज द यूनिवर्सलाइजिंग टेंडेंसी ऑफ एनी यूरोपियन थॉट. ओके, एक दिन में, एक हफ्ते में सबको समझना ही पड़ेगा, नहीं तो तुम स्टूपिड हो. दैट इज द यूनिवर्सलाइजिंग टेंडेंसी. तो इन द सेम वेन, Marxism is also rightly deemed as just another universalizing European project, though in Bharat it has been repackaged to accommodate crass and ugly contemporary exigencies, and has long allied itself opportunistically with both European and Middle Eastern imperialisms. And J. Deepak is probably the first one to recognize this problem, that Middle Eastern imperialism, सेटलर्ड कॉलोनियलिज्म, जो जिसके लिए सिर्फ वाइट लोगों को दोष दिया जाता है इंडिया में, तो ये सेटलर कॉलोनियलिज्म किसने किया है? ओके, ये तो मिडिल ईस्टर्न लोगों ने किया है, सेंट्रल एशियन इस्लामिक किंग्स ने किया है. ओके, बिकॉज यू सी सेटलर कॉलोनियलिज्म के डेफिनेशन में ये आता है कि पहली बात तो डेफिनेशन आता है कि इट्स डन बाय वाइट पीपल. दैट्स एन इनहेरेंटली स्टूपिड डिस्क्रिप्शन. बट इवन इफ वी इग्नोर दैट, just by taking that liberty, what they also say is that the indigenous community is in minority, numerical minority में होगा तभी कोई situation को settler colonialism बोला जाएगा. So इसलिए इंडिया को settler colonialism नहीं बोल सकते हैं मिडिल ईस्टर्न्स की तरफ से, because Hindus are still in majority. Although it doesn't matter. Okay, atrocity करने के लिए किसी को majority नहीं बनना पड़ता है. When Brahmins were actually ever were oppressing non-Brahmins, during those times Brahmins were not the majority, British were never the majority, and therefore Islamic invaders and Middle Eastern colonizers don't have to be the majority to be the oppressors. वो आर्ग्यूमेंट भी छोड़ते हैं. ओके, तो ठीक है, इंडिया में सेटल्ड कॉलोनियलिज्म नहीं है मिडिल ईस्टर्न कॉलोनाइजर्स का, मगर बांग्लादेश और पाकिस्तान में क्या है? And not one colonialism or post-colonial scholar has ever spoken about this. nor have they even attributed the term settler colonialism to Middle Eastern imperialists. Only Sitaram Goel has spoken about this in to some extent, that what we say today, that Islam, Christianity, these are religions, while Hinduism is a way of life. Okay, what Sitaram Goel is doing is, he has said that it's the reverse, it's the opposite. If we are a religion, then Christianity and Islam, they are not religions. This is Sitaram Goel's quote. And he says that they are not religions, they are just simply political imperialist structures. They are not even religions. What Sanatan Dharma is, that is religion. So he at least had his heart in his right place, and he almost put the finger in the right spot. But J. Sai Deepak has gone a step further and has diagnosed Middle Eastern colonialism as a colonialism at least. वो भी इससे पहले नहीं हुआ. Okay, hence the imperative of decoloniality to prevent the decimation of what remains of Bharat's indigeneity. This is how it's going to be maintained. Okay, in a foray, okay, let's I don't know if the internet is back on. Let's just check. No, I don't think it's back on. Yeah, I'm still getting warning signs. Okay, bunk. I don't know what happened. Okay, in a foray into the history of the 17th century British incursion into Bharat, Sai Deepak highlights the cultural and religious nature of the East India Company's motivations. Which the East India Company's motivations is wrongly depicted in most historical accounts as essentially commercial. Okay, propagating the gospel was affirmed as a purpose at the very outset in 1614. तो ये कॉमर्स के लिए आए थे, कॉमर्स के लिए ये सब किया, कॉमर्स के लिए टेम्पल्स तोड़ दिया. ये जो आर्ग्यूमेंट है पोस्ट कॉलोनियलिस्ट स्कॉलर्स का, वो बहुत ही गलत है. बिकॉज propagating the gospel was affirmed as a purpose at the very outset in 1614 and subsequently repeated unequivocally, and the East India Company was specifically authorized to make war on quote-unquote heathen nations by a charter in 1683. Heathen nations क्या है? Heathen मतलब असभ्य and mainly non-Christian. One critical dimension of colonial experiences was the policy of tolerating the scriptural and doctrinal essence of Hinduism. Tolerating the scriptural and doctrinal essence of Hinduism, and also delegitimizing popular practices adjudged by colonial bureaucrats to be superstitious. Okay, so what they did was they tolerated the scriptural and doctrinal essence of Hinduism while at the same time delegitimizing popular practices adjudged by colonial bureaucrats to be superstitious. तो उनके लेंस से तो बात हो रहा है. So whatever they consider superstitious was considered superstitious and ended up being considered superstitious even by the native elites. मगर चर्च में जाके प्रे करना वो सुपरस्टिशन नहीं है, यज्ञ करना सुपरस्टिशन है. This intervention imposed a thoroughly distortive Christian paradigm of separation between the religious and the secular, meaningless in terms of Indic and dharmic philosophical perceptions and practices. What they considered secularism was absolutely irrelevant and meaningless in the Indian context, because हमारे यहाँ separation of church and state नहीं हो सकता है. हमारे राजाएं always used to take advices and guidance from our religious leaders, our priests, who were experts in the Vedas, the Upanishads. उनमें वेदास और उपनिषद्स में पुराना में जो विजडम है, उस विजडम के बेसिस पे राजा देश चलाता था. सो सेक्युलरिज्म इफ फॉलोड इन द if someone wants to follow secularism the way it was followed in Europe, even that is not being followed. But even more important than that, secularism जो है यूरोप में वो फॉलो करना भी डिजायरेबल नहीं है and absolutely unacceptable है. मगर if at all you want to do that, even that is not being done. Secularism is not supposed to be that just kill off the indigenous faith. उस ये आइटम, ये आइडिया ऑफ सेक्युलरिज्म इज एब्सोल्युटली ओरिजिनल टू इंडिया. पीपल हु क्रिएटेड द आइडिया ऑफ सेक्युलरिज्म इन यूरोप डिड नॉट थिंक सेक्युलरिज्म टू बी दिस वे. वॉट एवर दे थॉट वो भी एक्सेप्टेबल नहीं है इंडिया में. सो इट्स अ थ्री फोल्ड प्रॉब्लम. सेक्युलरिज्म का तीन एंगल्स है. वन, it is not even relevant to India. Two, even if it's relevant to India, apply it in the way it was applied in Europe, which is not being done. Thirdly, it's a new idea of secularism that's being applied to India, which is only the Hindus cannot say anything pro-Hindu, which is hilarious and weird. The most enduring aspect of colonial interference, जो कि endure किया बहुत देर से, that prompted by cognizance of temple wealth. मंदिर में गोल्ड है, ये दिख गया लोगों को, was in successive legislative acts introducing state regulation of temples. Temple में सोना है, therefore regulate temples. It is this legacy that haunts the integrity and very durability of Sanatana Dharma in independent Bharat and the insistence of governments of all political stripes to allow the progressive degradation of temples. तो अभी प्रोग्रेसिव डेग्रेडेशन ऑफ टेम्पल्स तो नहीं हो रहा है, ठीक है, टेम्पल वेम्पल बनाया जा रहा है, मगर वहां से पैसा गवर्नमेंट को मिलते ही रहेगा. उस पैसे से फ्लाईओवर और स्कूल बनता ही रहेगा और लोगों को लगता ही रहेगा कि ये टीका वाले पुरोहित तो सारे खराब लोग हैं, चोरी वोरी करते हैं, रेप करते हैं मंदिर में जाके लेके. मगर उनको नहीं पता चलेगा कि ये रास्ता फ्लाईओवर स्कूल बन रहा है हिंदू डिवोटीज के पैसों से ही, जो कि टेम्पल से सरकार चोरी कर रहा है. into revelatory रिवील किया हुआ into revelatory concluding chapters, साई दीपक ग्राफिकली रिविजिट्स. कितना अच्छा फॉरवर्ड है बुक का. हाँ, ये फॉरवर्ड एनालाइज करके ही एक दिन का लाइव स्ट्रीम निकल गया. डॉक्टर गौतम सेन इज राइटिंग दिस फॉरवर्ड, बंगाली. into revelatory concluding chapters, साई दीपक graphically revisits the debates and legislative acts which preceded Bharat's first war of independence in 1857. अच्छा, 1857 के पहले क्या क्या डिबेट्स हो रहा था इंडिया में, and those that followed the assumption of direct rule over Bharat by the Westminster government. अच्छा, पहले तो ब्रिटिश ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी रूल कर रहा था, but when did it get into the hands of directly Queen Victoria, तब क्या क्या डिबेट्स हुआ, डिस्कोर्सेस हुआ, वो भी एनालाइज किया जा रहा है जैसा दीपक के द्वारा, and its designated representatives in Bharat. It is amply clear that effective political rule to preempt future revolts remained Christian in spirit, despite the Queen's proclamation of religious neutrality in 1858. This was not followed, with all the antecedent precepts of toleration continuing to be deeply imbued with Christian prejudices imposed on Hindu society and practice, in the context of official hostility towards alleged superstitions, etc. Okay, this sentence is a little long, so I'll read it again. It is amply clear that effective political rule to preempt future revolts, okay, भविष्य में revolts ना हो इसके लिए कुछ steps लिया गया, मगर वो steps remained Christian in spirit, despite the Queen's proclamation of religious neutrality in 1858. With all the antecedent precepts of toleration, हाँ हम tolerate कर लेंगे ये सब बोला गया, but that continued to be deeply imbued with Christian hostility towards these alleged superstitions. At the same time, the British debate on governing Bharat continued to reiterate the desirability of mass conversions of idolaters, publicly and resoundingly articulated by the Archbishop of Canterbury and supported by the then British Prime Minister. In addition, successive Government of India Acts was the constitution making acts. एक बार Government of India Act होता था, which meant that that another constitution came up. In addition, successive बाद में जो Government of India Acts हुआ of the British Parliament modifying the Act of 1858 extended some legislative representation to Bharatiyas. थोड़ा representative India से भी उठ रहा था, indigenous community से, but the underlying ethos of the primacy of European Christian theological inspiration motivating the colonizer remained intact. Okay, थोड़ा बहुत representation होने दो, मगर underlying ethos of the primacy of European Christian theology वो रहेगा. यूरोपियन क्रिश्चियन थियोलॉजिकल इंस्पिरेशन वो प्राइमरी ही रहेगा, एंड दैट केप्ट मोटिवेटिंग द कॉलोनाइजर, एंड दैट वाज इंटैक्ट फॉर एवर until they stayed in the country. In the final analysis, the discerning lawyer Sai Deepak underscores the fact that the Government of India Act of 1919 provided the framework for independent Bharat's constitution of 1950, while the Government of India Act of 1935 provided its architecture, which he promises to explore further in the sequels to this book. Further, interrogation by Sai Deepak of founding documents and pronouncements of leading Western statesmen affirms how the notion of quote-unquote civilized nations to characterize the expanding international order asserted a secular Christian motive to define it at the Paris Peace Conference of 1919. Oh, okay. So ये सेंटेंस में बहुत कुछ बोल दिया गया. तो ये जो नोशन ऑफ सिविलाइज नेशंस है, सिविलाइज नेशन कौन है? जिनमें कोई सुपरस्टिशन नहीं है, हु थिंक लाइक क्रिश्चियंस. सो वेस्टर्न स्टेट्समैन अफर्म्स हाउ द नोशन ऑफ सिविलाइज नेशंस एंड दैट इज डन टू कैरेक्टराइज द एक्सपैंडिंग इंटरनेशनल ऑर्डर. इंटरनेशनल ऑर्डर कैसे एक्सपैंड हुआ? क्योंकि कॉलोनाइजेशन हुआ. द एक्सपैंडिंग इंटरनेशनल ऑर्डर असर्टेड अ सेक्युलर क्रिश्चियन मोटिव to define it at the Paris Peace Conference of 1919 and the Treaty of Versailles. Sai Deepak concludes the book with the hope that Bharat's public institutions, including its judiciary and executive, will reflect thoughtfully on Bharat's indigenous traditions, and that decolonial perspectives will inform their decisions on issues arising in relation to them, so that Bharat's enduring coloniality, the mental colonization, can be overcome. The book is a handsome effort to bring ideas and modes of analysis to the attention of Indian readers that will enable the achievement of true freedom and fresh thinking to embrace their historical cultural antecedents with dignity. This is where the foreword ends, and this is where our live stream ends today. आज का लाइव स्ट्रीम एंड में थोड़ा weird हो गया because apparently the video stopped working. Video was having lags, so I had to do audio during this last section, and tomorrow also we will do it. We will continue with India that is Bharat. Tomorrow we'll get into acknowledgements as well. Okay, and if other people are online, let me know. If you don't want me to get into acknowledgements and directly go to the book, let me know what you all want. Okay, so I'm ending the live stream now, guys. Good night. And from 12 I'll start my other live stream as well, discussing Manusmriti. Okay, good night, guys.